Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're gathered today on the 4th of the 10th month on our Creator's calendar as we comprehend it, which happens to line up with the 14th of December, 2024 on the Gregorian calendar. And we're continuing with our reading of Shemot or Exodus and the story of our forefathers here, where now that they've gone into Egypt, they've spent the intermeeting 215 years, some of it in liberty, some of it in servitude. And now Moshe has gone to Pharaoh, and he's at the behest of our Mashiach, who was sent from the Father as an Elohim to the people. So he, as an Elohim, sent Moshe to be like an Elohim over the people, right? A type, a hand in glove type of figure where he is like the one that would be coming. So in all things, that's type and picture that he's trying to share with us, right? But either way, we're on chapter 5, and this is where it says Pharaoh chides Moshe and Aharon for their message. He increases the Israelis' task and he checks their complaints, and they cry out upon Moshe and Aharon, and Moshe complains to Elohim. So this is the first time where Moshe goes to Pharaoh, if you recall. Beforehand, it was just the events leading up to this. And after this went in Moshe and Aharon to Pharaoh, and they said to him, "These things says Yahuwah, Elohim of Yisrael, send my people away that they may keep a feast to me in the wilderness." And Pharaoh said, "Who is he that I should hearken to his voice, so that I should send away the children of Yisrael? I do not know Yahuwah, and I will not let Yisrael go." And they said to him, "The Elohim of the Hebrews has called us to him. We will therefore a go, or we will go therefore a 3 days journey into the wilderness, that we may sacrifice to Yahuwah our Elohim, lest at any time death or slaughter happen to us." Now, notice they're going to do that least, right? And this is a theme, if you pay attention, there's blessings attributed to obedience and curses attributed to disobedience to his will for those that are in covenant with him or that freely say they will do it, right? It stays consistent throughout. That was the point I was trying to show right here. It says, "And the king of Mitzrayim or Mizraim, Egypt, said to him, Why do you, Moshe and Aharon, turn the people from their works? Depart each of you to your works." And Pharaoh said, "Behold now, the people are very numerous. Let us not then give them rest from their work." And Pharaoh gave orders to the taskmasters of the people and the accountants, saying, "You shall no longer give straw to the people for brick making, as yesterday and the 3rd day." That's a colloquialism in the Hebrew. They translated literally, but it means as is the days before, right? "But let them go themselves and collect straw for themselves, and you shall impose on them daily the rate of brick making which they perform. You shall not abate anything, for they are idle. Therefore they have cried, or have they cried, saying, Let us arise and do sacrifice to our Elohim. Let the works of these men be made grievous, and let them care for these things and not care for vain words." And the taskmasters and the accountants hastened them, and they spoke to the people, saying, "Thus says Pharaoh, I give you straw no longer. Go you yourselves, get for yourselves straw whensoever you can find it, for nothing is diminished from your rate." So the people were dispersed in all the land of Mitzrayim. to gather stubble for straw. And the taskmasters hastened them, saying, Fulfill your regular daily tasks, even as when straw was given you. And the accountants of the race of the children of Israel, who were set over them by the masters of Pharaoh, were scourged, saying, Why have you not fulfilled your rates of brickwork as yesterday and the third day, today also? And the accountants of the children of Israel went in and cried to Pharaoh, saying, Why do you act thus to your servants? Straw is not given to your servants, and they tell us to make brick. And behold, your servants have been scourged. You will therefore injure your people. And he said to them, You are idle. You are idlers. Therefore you say, Let us go, do sacrifice to our Elohim. Now then go and work, for straw shall not be given to you, yet you shall return the rate of bricks. And the accountants of the children of Israel saw themselves in an evil plight, saying, You shall not fail to deliver the daily rate of brick making. And they met Moshe and Aharon coming forth to meet them, as they came forth from Pharaoh. And they said to them, Yahuwah look upon you and judge you, for you have made our savor, our taste, or our smell, right, abominable before Pharaoh and before his servants, to put a sword into his hands to slay us. And Moshe turned to Yahuwah and said, I pray, Yahuwah, why have you afflicted this people? And wherefore have you sent me? For from the time that I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has afflicted this people, and you have not delivered your people. All right, and we'll continue right here. Chapter 6 here. And this is where we have the first mention or the first reference of a missing section, which isn't very large, but you'll see it here. It says, And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Now you shall see what I will do to Pharaoh, for he shall send them forth with a mighty hand, and with a high arm shall he cast them out of his land. And Elohim spoke to Moshe and said to him, I am Yahuwah, and I appeared to Abraham and Yitzhak and Jacob, being their Elohim, but I did not manifest to them my name Yahuwah. Now, I don't know, there's contentions about how that's translated or what that might mean, because you can look back and see that Abraham called on Yahuwah's name. One of the three men that he bowed down to and worshipped and washed his feet and fed, he called Yahuwah. So, to say that he didn't know him by that name is directly contradictory to what we can read. This is one of the kind of things where there's a bump in the road. When you get to that, you don't throw out the multiple witnesses and attested facts that you already have. You take the thing that you don't know, that you don't have an attributed witness to, that you're uncertain about, and you just set it on a shelf. It's not ignored, but you also don't take it and presume to do one thing or another with it, because we don't know. Once you get a different translation or other confirming witnesses that help you to rectify where that actually goes, then we know what to do with it. But the only honest thing to do is to profess our ignorance and ask for help and wait for it to come, right? It says, And I established my covenant with them to give them the land of the Canaanim, the land wherein they sojourned, in which also they dwelt as strangers. And I hearkened to the groaning of the children of Israel, the affliction with which the Mizraites, the Egyptians, enslaved them, and I remembered the covenant with you. Now, for anyone that might not know, the word Obed like we get the English obey, obedience, but obed in Hebrew means to serve or a servant. Obadiah, Obed Yahu, is the servant of Yahuwah. It also is used right here for the word slave. It's the same word. There is no difference between, for practical purposes, a servant and a slave. And back in the day, that was more true. Today, it's less easily seen. Go speak to the children of Israel, saying, I, Yahuwah, or I am Yahuwah, and I will lead you forth from the tyranny of the Mitzrayites, and I will deliver you from bondage, and I will ransom you with a high arm and great judgment. And I will take you to me a people for myself, and will be your Elohim, and you shall know that I am Yahuwah your Elohim, who brought you out from the tyranny of the Mitzrayites or Egyptians. And I will bring you into the land concerning which I stretched out my hand to give it to Abraham and Yitzhak and Jacob, and I will give it to you for an inheritance. I am Yahuwah. And then right here, you can see this is going to be the first section I'll show you. Verse 9 from Exodus here says, So Moshe spoke thus to the children of Israel, but they did not heed Moshe because of anguish of spirit or ruach and cruel bondage. And they said to Moshe, Let us alone, that we may serve the Egyptians, for the Egyptians. For it would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than that we should die in the wilderness. And this part is not in the text in the Masoretic version, but you see later on, and this is what we'll see, even in the Masoretic text and later on in this version, you'll see where that is referenced, where it mentions that they had said that, but where it was is not seen generally. However, the Samaritan Pentateuch and the Dead Sea Scrolls have that. But right here, you can see that they do not. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, Go in, speak to Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim, that he send forth the children of Israel out of his hand. Now, the point is, Moshe came and told them, and they didn't believe. This is partly why the plagues, to begin with, it doesn't mention that it was separating or making a distinction between his people or not, right? Because they were not believing in the things that he was going to do either, and they grumbled. There's things to keep in mind there, right? And these will echo later on for what they do, their children's children will likewise follow suit, right? And this is the echoes of things that happen with the patriarchs that I want you to keep in mind. Sorry about that. We're right here. And it says, And Moshe spoke before Yahuwah, saying, Behold, the children of Israel hearken not to me. And how shall Pharaoh hearken to me? I am not eloquent. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and Aharon, and gave them a charge to Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim, that he should send forth the children of Israel out of the land of Mitzrayim. And these are the heads of the houses of their families, the sons of Reuben, the firstborn of Yisrael, Hanok and Phalis, Azron and Carmi, or Charmi, right? This is the kindred of Reuben. And the sons of Shimon, Yamuel and Yamin and Ehud, or the Greek has Aod, right? And Yakin and Sa'ar, and Saul or Shaul, the son of a Zidonian woman. These are the families of the sons of Shimon. Now, I don't know if that's the Zidonian woman or if that's the Canaanite, right? If it was the Canaanite woman, it's a little different. The original Zidonian, Zor and Zidon were names of the sons of Canaan that originally founded those cities and they were named after them. But the people that took it over were paganized Hebrews, and that mentions in their own histories that they took it over by either purchasing or conquest. One was probably through purchase and the other through conquest. And they kept the original names of the places, but they were related to the Hebrews that came out with Moshe. They were, it mentions the brotherly covenant they had with one another in the foretellers in the Bible. And then in the book of Gad the seer, it talks about that the covenant that was made between them. And you can look at that in detail. But while Hiram and the Phoenicians, so called, were not in covenant and having to keep all of the added bonds of the law, they were told when they were walking rightly to keep the instructions that were given to Noah that were required for all his sons. And that's not to be perverted with the Noahide laws they're trying to push today, but that was true for everyone outside of covenant until our Mashiach came. So there's a different context for that. It says, and these are the names of the sons of Louis according to their kindreds: Gresham, or Gershom, which means sojourner, Kohath, and Merari. And the years of the life of Louis were 137. Now, I want you to see right here, just in the genealogy or the lifespans of these patriarchs from the sons of Louis, from Kohath to Amram to Moshe, you cannot have the 400-year period in Egypt. It's not possible. A brother, Nathan, on YouTube channel, I think is Nathan 84 or something like that. He's the gentleman that did were the pyramids built before the flood, and how long did the children of Israel sojourn in Egypt, right? He has two of those videos that are very well put together on the topic, and it goes into more detail than I care to talk about right now. But this is one of the evidences that he shows. And you can see you got 137 here. You have 133 for Kohath here. You had 132 for Amram, and then 80 for Moshe. You can add them all up, and even if you put them at the ends of themselves, it's only 350 or so. So it could not have been a 400-year exodus, especially keeping in mind that Kohath was born before they went in to the land. But that's neither here nor there. It says, and these are the sons of Gresham, Libni and Shimei, and the houses of their family, and the sons of Kohath, Amram and Yazar, or Yisha'ar, Hebron and Uziel. And the years of the life of Kohath were 133 years. And the sons of Merari, Mahli, or Muli, and Umusi. These are the houses of the families of Louis according to their kindreds. And Amram took to wife Jochebed, the daughter of his father's brother. That's not right. Jochebed is the daughter of his grandfather. It was his own aunt. This is a typo. And you can find that in the scriptures, right? Or in the regular scriptures. And she bore to him both Aharon and Moshe and Miriam, their sister. And the years of the life of Amram were 132 years. And the sons of Izhar, Korah, and Nephek, and Zikri. And the sons of Uziel, Mishael, and Elzaphan, and Sigri. And Aharon took to himself to wife Elizabeth, or Elisheba, the daughter of Aminadab, the sister of Neshon. And Neshon here is the leader of the tribe of Yehuda in the wilderness. His son Salmon was one of the spies. right? That married Rahab, the harlot or the innkeeper, and their son Boaz married Ruth, who had Obed, who had Yeshai, who had Dawid. And it says, and she bore to him both Nadab and Abihu, and Eleazar and Ithamar. So you see, this is the first time where the line of Aharon and the line of Yahuda are intermarried, and all the sons of Aharon from their mother's side can rule. If you remember, the kingdom went to Yahuda, and the idea of it passing that very way is what was foretold and what actually happened with Tafi being taken over to Ireland, marrying the son of Zerah that was there, and their children continuing the line of Dawid through their mother's side over the children of Israel, literally. But to continue, it says, and the sons of Korach, Asir and Elkanah and Abiezer, these are the generations of Korah. And Eleazar the son of Aharon took to himself a wife of the daughters of Phutiel, and she bore to him Phinehas. These are the heads of the family of the Luiim, according to their generations. This is Aharon and Moshe, whom Elohim told to bring out the children of Israel out of the land of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, with their forces, or with their hosts. And if you remember Moshe's, that was his Egyptian name, or the name he was given by the daughter of Pharaoh. The name that we have from the Dead Sea Scrolls was Melech Yahu, or the messenger Yahuwah, the messenger of Yahuwah. And it says, and these are they that spoke with Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim, and Aharon himself and Moshe brought out the children of Israel from the land of Mitzrayim. In the day in which Yahuwah spoke to Moshe in the land of Mitzrayim. Then Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, I am Yahuwah, speak to Pharaoh, king of Mitzrayim, whatsoever I say to you. And Moshe said before Yahuwah, behold, I am not able in speech, and how shall Pharaoh hearken to me? All right, this section, chapter 7, we're going to see a few more parts in that are missing here. This one is not so relevant to anything, although you can see it's missing, and without this, you don't have the context for what's mentioned later on, like I said, that we get to. But the rest of these, you're going to see that mostly it's a redundant part that's removed. But right here, chapter 7. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, saying, behold, I have made you a Elohim to Pharaoh, and Aharon your brother shall be your prophet or foreteller. And remember, no one has ever seen or heard the Father. The only mediator between Elohim and man is the man Mashiach. He's the one that spoke face to face with Moshe as a man speaks to his friend. He's the one that appears to other foretellers in dreams and visions. And he's the one that says, I only do what I see and I only say what I hear. So you can see these patterns. As he came as Elohim, he sends as an Elohim, just like he said that he does. And he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Willing, Father willing, you can see these patterns as we go, and they just keep making sense because it's the truth. Now, this isn't a novel thing. These are actually explained quite in detail by believers after our Mashiach came, Irenaeus and others that were taught by the emissaries or the apostles, if you will. So these are all things I'm just explaining what we're going to read plainly later on. And you shall say to him all things that I charge you, and Aharon your brother shall speak to Pharaoh, that he should send forth the children of Israel out of his land. And I will harden the heart of Pharaoh, And I will multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh will not hearken to you, and I will lay my hand upon Mitzrayim, and will bring out my people, the children of Israel, with my power out of the land of Egypt or Mitzrayim, with great vengeance. And all the Mitzrayites shall know that I am Yahuwah, stretching out my hand upon Mitzrayim, and I will bring out the children of Israel out of the midst of them. And Moshe and Aharon did as Yahuwah commanded them, so they did. And Moshe was 80 years old, and Aharon his brother was 83 years old when he spoke to Pharaoh. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and Aharon, saying, Now if Pharaoh should speak to you, saying, Give us a sign or a wonder, then you shall say to your brother Aharon, Take your rod and cast it upon the ground before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it shall become a serpent. And Moshe and Aharon went in before Pharaoh and before his servants, and they did so, as Yahuwah commanded them. And Aharon cast down his rod before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. But Pharaoh called together the wise men of Mitzrayim, and the sorcerers, and the charmers also of the Mitzrayites, did likewise with their sorceries, with their magic. This one, it says enchantments here. The word there is lachat, a blaze or enwrapping magic. All right. Enchantment would be to cause something to be seen that isn't real. A sorcery, that isn't the best word. That's the word we get like pharmakia, a brew or a potion or some type, a charmed thing that you would eat, drink, or whatever. This is not quite that same thing. It says, and they cast down each his rod, and they became serpents, but the rod of Aharon swallowed up their rods. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he hearkened not to them, as Yahuwah charged them. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, The heart of Pharaoh is made hard, so that he should not let my people go. Go to Pharaoh early in the morning. Behold, he goes forth to water, and you shall meet him on the bank of the river, and you shall take in your hand the rod that was turned into a serpent. All right, and then we're going to look at this version real quick. It says, and you shall say to him, Yahuwah, the Elohim of the Hebrews, has sent me to you, saying, Let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But indeed, until now, you would not hear. Thus says Yahuwah, By this you shall know that I am Yahuwah, that I am he who causes it to be. Excuse me. The meaning of his name, he who exists, he who causes it to be, right? Behold, I will strike the waters which are in the river with the rod that is in my hand, and they shall be turned to blood. And the fish that are in the river shall die, the river shall stink, and the Egyptians will loathe to drink the water of the river. And all of that is in the Masoretic text. What is next is missing. And Moshe and Aharon went to Pharaoh and said to him, Yahuwah, Elohim of the Hebrews, has sent us to you, saying, Let my people go, that they may serve me in the wilderness. But indeed, until now you would not hear. Thus says Yahuwah, by this shall you know that I am Yahuwah. Behold, I will strike the waters which are in the river with the rod that is in my hand, and they shall be turned to blood. And the fish that are in the river shall die, the river shall stink, and the Egyptians will loathe to drink the water of the river. So you can see that the part is exactly redundant from what we just read, except it has the and in its present tense. First they were told to, and then you see they went and actually did the very thing they were told. And that what he said is exactly what happens theme is what we will see over and over and over again throughout the entire thing here. But because of half of it being removed, you miss that. It says these things says Yahuwah. I already read that part. And the river, and it shall stink, right? It says, and y'all, and you can see right here, this is Yahuwah telling them to go say this, and then it doesn't mention that they did that, but then it has him telling them to do it with no mention of the rejection there, right? But right here it says, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, say to your brother Aharon, take your rod in your hand and stretch forth your hand over the waters of Mitzrayim and over the rivers and over their canals and over their ponds and over all their standing water, and it shall become blood. And there was blood in all the land of Mitzrayim, both in vessels of wood and of stone. And Moshe and Aharon did so, as Yahuwah commanded them, and Aharon, having lifted up with his rod, smote the water in the river before Pharaoh and before his servants, and changed all the water in the river into blood. And the fish of the river died, or, and the river stank thereupon, and the Mitzrayites could not drink water from the river, and the blood was in all the land of Mitzrayim. And the charmers also of the Mitzrayites did so with their sorceries or magic, and the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not hearken to them, even as Yahuwah said. And Pharaoh turned and entered into his house, nor did he fix his attention even on this thing. And all the Mitzrayites dug around about the river, so as to drink water, for they could not drink water from the river. And 7 days were fulfilled after Yahuwah had smitten the river. It doesn't mention in the regular version of the Bible there, or the scriptures, but the children that were taken from the Hebrews by the Pharaoh were done so for 7 months. So this was done for 7 days, but not quite a parallel there. All right, chapter 8. This one begins again right here. You can see there's a section that will be missing. So we're going to go ahead and read from that. But starting in verse 1, it says, and Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, go to Pharaoh and say to him, thus says Yahuwah, let my people go that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all your territory with frogs. So the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, into your bedroom, and on your bed, into the houses of your servants, and or on your people, into your ovens, and into your kneading bowls. And the frogs shall come up on you, on your people, and on all your servants. And this is one of the things I want you to keep in mind. It doesn't go into detail about it in scripture here or really anywhere, but the Egyptians worshipped animals, creatures that they attributed divine characteristics to. It's gone over in some detail by Kepha in the recognitions of Clement, but the point is, our our creator was mocking their, he was bringing their own false mighty ones to their own judgment. Everything that he did here was to throw their false mighty ones at them so that they can know that he is the only true Elohim. And this is consistent with how he treats everyone throughout the entirety of scripture. And I didn't realize how prevalent it was, but even, for example, the king of Babylon's dream, where he has a tree that's chopped down. It's just a stump with a band put around it, and then from that, a sprout comes out. All of that's reminiscent to the false pagan worship that he was participating in, a refutation to his sovereign mighty one with Nimrod, the Yule log, and the Christmas tree that still celebrated today. But that's the origin of it. And it was refuted against him, who was a practitioner of those things from Babylon, the source of where it came from. Um, the Romans, likewise, in Revelation, uh, they're constantly being corrected, and the judgments against them and the world today, like the blood waters, the skin cancer, and the things that are happening, happen in trinities or in threes because they worship a trinity, or it happened to the trident of people, and according to their Apollyon and the other pagan things that they observe. So it's a very serious thing. But once you get your mind around it, you can see a correlation between events and cause and effect, especially how it relates to us. But here you can just read what he said, and now you see exactly what he said is exactly what they repeat. They do the thing that they were told to. And Moshe and Aharon came to Pharaoh, and they said to him, Thus says Yahuwah, let my people go that they may serve me. But if you refuse to let them go, behold, I will smite all your territory with frogs, so the river shall bring forth frogs abundantly, which shall go up and come into your house, into your bedroom, on your bed, into the houses of your servants, on your people, into your ovens, and into your kneading bowls. And the frogs shall come up on you, on your people, and on all your servants. And then it looks like it has verse 5 here as well, but it continues there. You can see that that part was missing, and then it just has Moshe speaking to them again. But we'll read this one as well. It says, Then Yahuwah spoke to Moshe, say to Aharon, stretch out your hand with your rod over the streams, over the rivers, and over the ponds, and cause frogs to come up on the land of Egypt, or Mitzrayim. And then the part that's missing says, And Moshe said to Aharon, stretch out your hand with your rod, and cause frogs to come up on the land of Egypt. And it says, And Aharon, after he was told to, right? And Aharon stretched forth his hand over the waters of Mitzrayim, and brought up the frogs. And the frog was brought up, and covered the land of Egypt. And the charmers, or magicians of the Mitzrayites, also did likewise with their magic, and brought, or enchantments, right? And brought up the frogs on the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh called Moshe and Aharon, and said, Pray for me to Yahuwah, and let him take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I will send them away, and they shall sacrifice to Yahuwah. Now notice Pharaoh isn't just letting it sit and ignoring it now, because it had what he had plagued him before happened a week, and he didn't want this to just continue. While his magicians were able to affect the curses and bring about the same plague in a type, they could not fix them. And that's a theme that's mentioned later on, but nowhere, it's not mentioned here specifically. It's just what you see as a fact of what was playing out. And Moshe said to Pharaoh, Appoint me a time when I shall pray for you and for your servants and for your people, to cause the frogs to disappear from you and from your people and from your houses. Only in the river shall they be left behind. And he said on the morrow. And he, Moshe, said therefore, As you have said, that you may know that there is no other but Yahuwah. Right? So he gave Pharaoh the whatever you say, appoint the time, and the point was that so he would know that there is no other Elohim but Yahuwah. right? The one who causes things to be. And the frogs shall be removed away from you, and from your houses, and from the villages, and from your servants, and from your people. Only in the river shall they be left. And Moshe and Aharon went forth from Pharaoh, and Moshe cried to Yahuwah concerning the restriction of the frogs, as Pharaoh appointed him. And and Yahuwah did as Moshe said, and the frogs died out of the houses, and out of the villages, and out of the fields. And they gathered them together in heaps, and the land stank. And when Pharaoh saw that there was relief, his heart was hardened, and he did not hearken to them as Yahuwah spoke. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, say to Aharon, stretch forth your rod with your hand, and smite the dust of the earth, and there shall be lice upon man, and upon quadrupeds, and in all the land of Mitzrayim. So Aharon stretched out his rod with his hand, and smote the dust of the earth, and there was lice on men, and on quadrupeds, quadrupeds rather, and in all the dust of the earth there were lice. Quadrupeds are four-footed beasts for anyone that might not know. And the charmers also did so with their magic, right? To bring forth louse, and they could not. And the lice were both on the men and on the beasts or quadrupeds. So the magician said to Pharaoh, this is the finger of Elohim. But the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he hearkened not to them as Yahuwah said. So you see, this should terrify anyone who is stubborn in doing things that they know is wrong. Because there might come a time where we don't get to change our course of action until we get what's coming to us. Now, those that are in positions of authority are judged more strictly than others, but pride comes and then comes shame, and it's a horrible fall. And there's a lot of that going on amongst people today that we have to be mindful of. So it continues right here. This is, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, rise early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh as he comes out to the water. And for anyone that's not aware, the Pharaoh, just like Molech, right, or the Caesars, they were venerated as a mighty one. And one of the things is at least this is what I'm familiar with. I might be mistaken here, but they would not use the bathroom like normally or go bury a hole because they were considered like a mighty one, but they would bathe in the waters of the river, and they would handle their business then. Part of their ritual ceremonies that they would do. This is, rise early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh as he comes out to the water. Then say to him, thus says Yahuwah, let my people go that they may serve me, or else if you will not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on you and your servants, and on your people, and into your houses. The houses of the Egyptians shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they stand. And in that day I will set apart the land of Goshen. So this is the distinction he's now making between his people, and not beforehand. It was going to be on all his servants and everyone. But now he's making a distinction. Right? And in that day I will set apart the land of Goshen in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, in order that you may know that I am Yahuwah in the midst of the land. And just so you guys don't think that this is novel, everyone gets according to what their deserts are, is how he puts it. He's not unrighteous in anything that he does. And for another example of this kind of thing, when the Hebrews from the ancient history of Caldonia were contesting over who would get to the land or who would be chief over them, and they were having issues about complaining for one reason or another, the son of Louis that was their Kohen cried out to Yahuwah for provision because they didn't have water. and he provided water, and he poured so much rain that they had to shovel it out of the boat so that the boats wouldn't start to sink from taking on too much because they were grumbling. They did get the water and provision they needed, but it was not necessarily pleasant for them. The same here with his children. While they didn't believe and they had issues and they grumbled and complained, they had a little bit of chastisement too, but they were still delivered from Egypt like he said he would do. But everyone got according to what they deserved. And the same is true for us today too. It says, and I will make a difference between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall be. And Moshe and Aharon came to Pharaoh, saying to him, thus says Yahuwah, let my people go, that they may serve me. Or else if you will not let my people go, behold, I will send swarms of flies on you and your servants, and on your people, and into your houses. The houses of the Mitzrayites shall be full of swarms of flies, and also the ground on which they stand. And in that day I will set apart the land of Goshen, in which my people dwell, that no swarms of flies shall be there, in order that you may know that I am Yahuwah in the midst of the land. I will make a difference between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign shall be. And Yahuwah did so. Very thick swarms of flies came into the house of Pharaoh, into his servants' houses, and into all the land of Egypt, or Mitzrayim. The land was corrupted because of the swarms of flies. And this is what they called the dog fly, right? And Pharaoh called Moshe and Aharon, saying, go and sacrifice to Yahuwah your Elohim in the land. Remember, Pharaoh was instigated by Satan to try to do everything they can to stop them from fulfilling the promises, and that would be to deliver them to the land. So they want to keep them here or keep their stuff or whatever they're doing. That's why he went through all these different contrivances when all these things were happening. He was a willing tool that was no longer necessarily driving his own boat, if you will. And Moshe said, it cannot be so, for we shall sacrifice to Yahuwah our Elohim the abominations of the Mitzrayites. For if we sacrifice the abominations of the Mitzrayites before them, we shall be stoned. We will go a journey of 3 days into the wilderness, and we will sacrifice to Yahuwah our Elohim, as Yahuwah said to us. And Pharaoh said, I let you go, and do you sacrifice to your Elohim in the wilderness, but do not go very far away. Pray then for me to Yahuwah. And Moshe said, I then will go forth from you and pray to Elohim, and the dogflies shall depart both from your servants and from your people tomorrow. Do not you, Pharaoh, deceive again, so as not to send the people away to do sacrifice to Yahuwah. And Moshe went out from Pharaoh and prayed to Elohim. And Yahuwah did as Moshe said, and and removed the dog fly from Pharaoh. We call it a dog fly here. The original way was a gadfly, right? And from his servants and from his people, and there was not one left. And Pharaoh hardened his heart even on this occasion, and he would not send the people away. All right, and then again, we're hopping back over here. Father willing, you can see it's really just redundant parts that are missing for the most. Sometimes there's a word or two here, but generally they just remove the section that was superfluous and for whatever reason, their opinion, because it just repeated itself almost word for word. but it's the key for how things work. He said, you do, it happens. He said, you do, it happens. He said, you do, it happens over and over and over again. It says, then Yahuwah said to Moshe, go in to Pharaoh and tell him, thus says Yahuwah Elohim of the Hebrews, let my people go that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let them go and still hold them, behold, the hand of Yahuwah will be on your cattle in the field, on the horses, on the donkeys, on the camels, on the oxen, and the sheep, and on the sheep. A very severe pestilence, and Yahuwah will make a difference between the livestock of Yisrael and the livestock of Mitzrayim. So nothing shall die of all that belongs to the children of Yisrael. Then Yahuwah appointed a set time, saying, tomorrow Yahuwah will do this thing in the land. And Moshe and Aharon came to Pharaoh, saying to him, thus says Yahuwah Elohim of the Hebrews, let my people go that they may serve me. For if you refuse to let them go and still hold them, behold, the hand of Yahuwah will be on your cattle in the field, on the horses, on the donkeys, on the camels, on the oxen, and on the sheep, a very severe pestilence. And Yahuwah will make a difference between the livestock of Yisrael and the livestock of Mitzrayim. So nothing shall die of all that belongs to the children of Yisrael. Tomorrow Yahuwah will do this thing. Sorry, I just have to find out. There we go. And tomorrow, right here. Then verse 6, it says, and Yahuwah did this thing on the next day, and the cattle of the Egyptians died, but of the cattle of the children of Israel there died not one. And when Pharaoh saw that of all the cattle of the children of Israel there died not one, the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not let the people go. And Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and Aharon, saying, take you handfuls of ashes of the furnace, and let Moshe scatter it toward the Shamayim before Pharaoh and before his servants, and let it become dust over all the land of Mitzrayim. And there shall be upon men and upon beasts sore blains breaking forth both on men and on beasts, and all the land of Mitzrayim. Mitzrayim. Sore blains here, I think that's like the, we call them boils. I do believe that's what it is today. We can look that up. Yeah, an inflamed swelling or sore on the skin, see chilblain. I do believe that's what we call a boil today, where it swells up, is rather painful. So he took of the ashes of the furnace before Pharaoh, and Moshe scattered it toward the Shamayim, and it became sore blains breaking forth both on men and on beasts. And the magicians could not stand before Moshe because of the sores, for the sores were on the magicians and in all the land of Mitzrayim. And Yahuwah hardened Pharaoh's heart, and he hearkened not to them, as Yahuwah appointed. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, rise up early in the morning, and stand before Pharaoh, and you shall say to him, these things says Yahuwah Elohim of the Hebrews, send my people away that they may serve me. For at this present time do I send forth all my plagues into your heart, and the heart of your servants, and of your people, that you may know that there is not another such as I in all the earth. For now I will stretch forth my hand and smite you and kill your people, and you shall be consumed, from off the earth. And for this purpose have you been preserved, that I might display in you my strength, and that my name might be published in all the earth. Oh, this is 9:13 through 19. Did I miss that? I'm sorry. I did. It should have started right there. Let me back up and we'll read it here. It says, Then Yahuwah said to Moshe, Rise early in the morning and stand before Pharaoh and say to him, Thus says Yahuwah, Elohim of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For at this time I will send all my plagues into your very heart, and on your servants and on your people, that you may know that there is none like me in all the earth. Now if I had stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, then you would have been cut off from the earth. But indeed for this purpose I have raised you up, that I may show my power in you, and that my name may be declared in all the earth. Now, this is the man who usurped the throne to be risen up over the Egyptians for this very purpose. If you remember, or what we'll read about in the book of Yobelim, is that the battles between the Canaanites and the Egyptians that were fought, the Canaanites won, and they placed a dictator or a pharaoh over them from their own people. It says, And as yet you exalt yourself against my people, in that you will not let them go. Behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause a very heavy hail to rain down, such as has not been in Mitzrayim since its founding until now. Therefore send now and gather your livestock and all that you have in the field, for the hail shall come down on every man and every animal which is found in the land that is not brought home, and they shall die. And hail's never fallen in Egypt because it doesn't even form clouds there. It doesn't rain there. The Nile will swell for their water and irrigation. It's part of the things that are talked about in the recognitions of Clement as well, in the providences of our Creator. But that's why it says it had never happened like that. He's trying to show them that the one who made all things is the one that's judging them. And Moshe and Aharon came to Pharaoh, saying to him, Thus says Yahuwah Elohim of the Hebrews, Let my people go, that they may serve me. For at this time I will send all my plagues into your very heart, and on your servants, and on your people, that you may know that there is none like me in all the earth. Now if I had stretched out my hand and struck you and your people with pestilence, then you would have been cut off from the earth. But indeed for this purpose I have raised you up, that I may show my power in you, and that my name may be declared in all the earth. As yet you exalt yourself against my people, in that you will not let them go. Behold, tomorrow about this time I will cause a very heavy hail to rain down, such as has not been in Mitzrayim since its founding until now. Therefore send now and gather your livestock and all that you have in the field, for the hail shall come down on every man and every animal which is found in the field and is not brought home, and they shall die. Now I want you to pay attention that it's not just the children that listen, but some of the Egyptians that fear him listen too, and their stuff is preserved. They're probably part of that mixed multitude that went with them. He of the servants of Pharaoh that feared the word of Yahuwah gathered his cattle into the houses, and he that did not attend in his mind to the word of Yahuwah left the cattle in the fields. A parable here, if you can see it, about things that we ought to be considerate of, right? And Yahuwah said to Moshe, Stretch out your hand to Shamayim, and there shall be hail on all the land of Mitzrayim, both on the men and on the cattle, and on all the herbage on the land. And Moshe stretched forth his hand to Shamayim, and Yahuwah sent thunderings and hail, and the fire ran along upon the ground, and Yahuwah rained hail on all the land of Mitzrayim. So there was hail and flaming fire mingled with hail, and the hail was very great, such as was not in Mitzrayim, from the time there was a nation upon it. Fire and ice commingling in judgment together, and not melting or being disturbed by one another. This is gone over in detail, or in more detail, in what's called the Chokmah Shalomo, or the Wisdom of Solomon, when he's talking about these judgments against them, and how all nature was conforming to his will to judging them. And also the wild beasts that were sent would go through fire and not be burned, or the hail would not kill them. And they could see that it was the judgment of the Almighty that was against them, because creation was not functioning correctly. That very phenomenon is witnessed to completely outside of Scripture in the Chronicles. Oh, I can't remember not the Chronicles of Ipawar. That's the Egyptian that wrote about the plagues here in Egypt, but that was the Papyrus of Ipawar, I believe. There is a gentleman that wrote the Chronicles of the history of certain times. He was a monk, and he begged forgiveness like the thief on the stake, because he was translating the stuff that they weren't supposed to, but he knew that it was the right thing to do. And it mentioned the destruction of Antioch, that it had happened, that was recorded, that was foretold in Revelation for what Antioch, if you remember, Antioch was Antiochus Epiphanes, the one that did the things during the time of the Maccabees. That city was named after him. And it was from that city that the Nicolaitans got their rise. They got the Gnosticism and their marching orders from Alexandria, and the paganism that was with the Nag Hammadi library. And then it was between the Desert Fathers, as they called them in Egypt, the Antiochians, and the Nicolaitans in Rome, that they overthrew the real believers. But it was foretold of the destruction that would happen to that place. And then when you read the account that he mentions in there, creation was not working correctly. Things were happening contrary to what you'd expect. And it was absolute judgment from the Almighty in the very same way, where it was unequivocal what was happening to anyone that can perceive it. And that's why it was not shared so well and made public anymore. It says, and the hail smote in all the land of Mitzrayim, both on man and beast, and the hail smote all the grass in the field, and the hail broke in pieces all the trees in the field. Only in the land of Goshen, where the children of Israel were, the hail was not. And Pharaoh sent and called Moshe and Aharon and said to them, I have sinned this time. Yahuwah is righteous. Yahuwah Zadikanu, right? And I and my people are wicked. Pray then for me to Yahuwah, and let him cause the thunderings of Elohim to cease. That's one of the things. They have a word in Greek. I think I mentioned it in our Telegram chat. There's a whole study someone had done about the Elohim being seen in the storm, the manifestation of Elohim. And this is kind of alluded to with Eliyahu, where he sees the wind, but he's not in the wind. He sees the earthquake and the fire, but he's not in those things. And then he hears the still small voice, right? His premise there was that in the beginning at the garden, when they sinned, nature changed. A storm happened and Elohim was present there, saying, where are you? What's going on? And they were hiding from him because of that. It makes a lot more sense that the thundering storm of his, where are you? But it was from the sin that they had brought in that was manifesting in that manner. In the same way, you can see right here, it's the thunder and storm. Another part is at the Red Sea crossing, or the Sea of Reeds, the Yam Suf, if you will. when it parts and then comes back together, there's thunders, clouds, lightning, and there's a manifestation of storming, which is the presence or the thunderings of Elohim, as they call it here. But it's one of the things where they call it the manifestation of the Almighty. It says, pray then for me to Yahuwah, and let him cause the thunderings of Elohim to cease, and the hail and the fire, and I will send you forth, and you shall remain no longer. And Moshe said to him, when I shall have departed from the city, I will stretch out my hands to Yahuwah, and the thunderings shall cease, and the hail and the rain shall be no longer, that you may know that the earth is Yahuwah's. But as for you and your servants, I know that you have not yet feared Yahuwah. And the flax and the barley were smitten, for the barley was advanced, and the flax was seeding. But the wheat and the rye were not smitten, for they were late. And Moshe went forth from Pharaoh out of the city, and stretched out his hands to Yahuwah, and the thunders ceased, and the hail and the rain did not drop on the earth. And Pharaoh saw that the rain and the hail and the thunders ceased. He continued to sin, and hardened his heart and the heart of his servants. And the heart of Pharaoh was hardened, and he did not send forth the children of Israel, as Yahuwah said to Moshe. All right, and then continuing right here, I believe. Yeah, starting with chapter 1, or chapter 10, verse 1, it says, now Yahuwah said to Moshe, go in to Pharaoh, for I have hardened his heart and the hearts of his servants, that I may show these signs of mine before him, and that you may tell in the hearing of your son and of your son's sons the mighty things I have done in Egypt, and my signs which I have done among them, that you may know that I am Yahuwah your Elohim. And you will say to Pharaoh, thus says Yahuwah, Elohim of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Or else, if you refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory, and they shall cover the face of the earth, so that no one will be able to see the earth, and they shall eat the residue of what is left, which remains to you from the hill. And they shall eat every herb of the land, and every tree which grows up for you out of the field. They shall fill your houses, the houses of all your servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen, since the day that they were on the earth to this day. So Moshe and Aharon came in to Pharaoh and said to him, thus says Yahuwah, Elohim of the Hebrews, how long will you refuse to humble yourself before me? Let my people go, that they may serve me. Or else, if you will refuse to let my people go, behold, tomorrow I will bring locusts into your territory, and they shall cover the face of the earth, so that no one will be able to see the earth. And they shall eat the residue of what is left, which remains to you from the hail, and they shall eat every herb of the land, and every tree which grows up for you out of the land, or out of the field, rather. They shall fill your houses, the houses of all your servants, and the houses of all the Egyptians, which neither you nor your fathers nor your fathers' fathers have seen, since the day that they were on the earth to this day. And he turned and went out from Pharaoh. And the servants of Pharaoh say to him, how long shall this be a snare to us? Send away the men, that they may serve their Elohim. will you know that Mitzrayim is destroyed? And they brought back both Moshe and Aharon to Pharaoh, and he said to them, go and serve Yahuwah your Elohim. But who are they that are going with you? And Moshe said, we will go with the young and the old, with our sons and daughters, and sheep and oxen, for it is a feast of Yahuwah. And he said to them, so let Yahuwah be with you, as I send you away. You store also? See that evil is attached to you. He's saying that they're taking provisions with them while they go, right? Not so, but let the men go and serve Yahuwah, for this you yourselves seek. And they cast them out from the presence of Pharaoh. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, stretch out your hand over the land of Mitzrayim, and let the locust come up on the land, and it shall devour every herb of the land, and all the fruit of the trees, which the hail left. And Moshe lifted up his rod towards Shamayim, and Yahuwah brought a south wind upon the earth all that day and all that night. Oh, you know what? I just had a realization. The staff, if you guys remember, we just shared it not too long ago, but there's the prayer or the psalm for the intelligent in the Dead Sea Scrolls that's specifically for the Chodeshim, the first of the first, the first of the fourth, the first of the seventh, and the first of the 10th month. And in that, we just read it recently, right, a few days ago, if you had gone over it then. But in that, he mentions that the truth is the rock on which his feet tread, and it's the power of the Almighty is the staff of his right hand, meaning the Ruach. So he walks on the truth with our Mashiach, and he has the power of the Ruach as represented by the staff. And that's why you see him lifting up his staff, which is in his hand, right? And that's the one that effectually does the power. It's a type and picture. He does everything in parables, if you can see that. So I just had that realization right here. Never really considered that before, and I wanted to share that with you. Father willing, you can see more of those and the parables that he's showing throughout all of these things and how it points to him, right? But it says, and Moshe lifted up his rod towards Shamayim, and Yahuwah brought a south wind upon the earth all that day and all that night. The morning dawned, and the south wind brought up the locusts, and brought them up over all the land of Mitzrayim, and they rested in very great abundance over all the borders of Mitzrayim. Before them there were not such locusts, neither after them shall there be. And they covered the face of the land, or earth, and the land was wasted. And they devoured all the herbage of the land, and all the fruit of the trees, which was left by the hail. There was no green thing left on the trees, nor on all the herbage of the field, in all the land of Mitzrayim. And Pharaoh hastened to call Moshe and Aharon, saying, I have sinned before Yahuwah your Elohim, and against you. Pardon therefore my sin yet this time, and pray to Yahuwah your Elohim, and let him take away from me this death. And Moshe went forth from Pharaoh and prayed to Elohim. Or entreated Yahuwah, it says here, right? Although it mentions El there, but El Yahuwah, maybe it has both. I'd have to look at the Hebrew to know what it says there. And Yahuwah brought in the opposite direction a strong wind from the sea, and took up the locusts and cast them into the Reed Sea, or the Sea of Reeds, the Yam Suf. And there was not one locust left in all the land of Mitzrayim. And Yahuwah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not send away the children of Israel. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, stretch out your hand to Shamayim, and let there be darkness over the land of Mitzrayim, darkness that may be felt. And Moshe stretched out his hand to Shamayim, and there was darkness very black, even a storm over all the land of Mitzrayim 3 days. And for 3 days no man saw his brother, and no man rose up from his bed for 3 days, but all the children of Israel had light in all the places where they dwelt, or where they were. And again, Chokmah Shalomo, the wisdom of Solomon, goes into more detail about these events and what was going on there. And Pharaoh called Moshe and Aharon, saying, go serve Yahuwah your Elohim, only leave your sheep and your oxen, and your store depart with you, and let your store depart with you. And Moshe said, nay, but you shall give to us whole burnt offerings and sacrifices, which we will sacrifice to Yahuwah our Elohim. And our cattle shall go with us, and we will not leave a hoof behind. For of them we will take to serve Yahuwah our Elohim. But we know not in what manner we shall serve Yahuwah our Elohim until we arrive there. But Yahuwah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he would not let them go. And Pharaoh says, depart from me, beware of seeing my face again, for in what day you shall appear before me, you shall die. And Moshe says, you have said, I will not appear in your presence again. So he says, you said it, I won't do it. He's just agreeing with him, like our Mashiach, if you remember when he went to the Gardanians and he cast out that demon, or the legion, from that man. When they came, they saw what had happened. They went and asked him, just please leave. And he went and left, right? No arguing. And that's not to say these are exactly parallel to each other, but the ruach behind it, right? The actions behind the individual are the similar. That's the point I was trying to mention. Right here for chapter 11, it says, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, I will bring one more plague on Pharaoh and on Egypt, and afterward he will let you go from here. When he lets you go, he will surely drive you out from here altogether. Speak now in the hearing of the people, and let every man ask from his neighbor, and every woman from her neighbor, articles of silver and articles of gold and garments. And I will give the people favor in the sight of the Mitzrayites, and they will lend to them. And about midnight I will go out into the midst. And about midnight I will go out into the midst of Mitzrayim, and all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, or Egypt, shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on the throne, even to the firstborn of the female servant who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the animals. Then there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Mitzrayim, such as was not like it before, nor shall be like it again. But against none of the children of Israel shall a dog move its tongue against man or beast, that you may know that Yahuwah does make a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. And moreover, the man Moshe shall be very great in the land of Mitzrayim, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. Then Moshe said to Pharaoh, thus says Yahuwah, My son is my firstborn, Yisrael, or Yisrael is my firstborn, right? And he is saying to you, let my son go that he may serve me. But if you refuse to let him go, indeed I will kill your son, your firstborn. And Moshe said, thus says Yahuwah, about midnight I will go out into the midst of the land of Mitzrayim, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, or Mitzrayim, shall die. From the firstborn of Pharaoh who sits on the throne, even to the firstborn of the female servant who is behind the handmill, and all the firstborn of the animals. Then there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Mitzrayim, such as was not like it before, nor shall be like it again. But against none of the children of Israel shall a dog move its tongue, against man or beast, that you may know that Yahuwah does make a difference between the Egyptians and Yisrael. And all these your servants shall come down to me and bow down to me, saying, get out, and all the people who follow you. After that I will go out. Then he went out from Pharaoh in great anger. All right, let me continue from verse 8 there. And it says, and Moshe went forth from Pharaoh with wrath, and Yahuwah said to Moshe, Pharaoh will not hearken to you, that I may greatly multiply my signs and wonders in the land of Mitzrayim. And Moshe and Aharon wrought all these signs and wonders in the land of Mitzrayim, before Pharaoh, and Yahuwah hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not hearken to send forth the children of Israel out of the land of Mitzrayim. And I want to remind you, he did these things. Excuse me, he did these things to them, to Pharaoh and the Egyptians for what they had done to the people. As they do, so it's done unto them. And as he freely chose to be hard-hearted when he had the option, and he chose to do evil things, now it was taken from him where he could not go back from it until he got the consequences of the choices that he had made. That's a thing that we all have to keep in mind, because there might come a point where we are no longer able to freely choose not to do a thing until we get what we have coming. Thank you for that. I was just informed that my screen sharing is showing the wrong chapter, so if you give me just one moment. All right, continuing with chapter 12 here. It says, and Yahuwah spoke to Moshe and Aharon in the land of Mitzrayim, saying, this month shall be, or to you, the beginning of months. It is the first to you among the months of the year. This would be Abib, right? The first month in which the Passover is. And right here, Yahuwah is giving Moshe the Passover, and Moshe, as a foreteller, is literally foretelling the time and place of our Mashiach's death that would be. Very specifically, he was the Passover on the Passover. The very time of the feast was when he was killed, not at a different time, as some people like to believe for whatever reason. But what the texts actually say is that he was foretelling the exact time. And this was explained by taught ones that were approved by our Maker after he came. But I mention that because there's contention today with people that presume to be scholars that have this make-believe fictional history that isn't really true, that isn't in scripture, that they put on there to get people to believe stuff that isn't real. They have this idea that there was two types of feasts being kept there, and that our Mashiach kept the Passover with his taught ones before he was the Passover, which was a different feast, but that's plainly not in the text itself. when you read about the Last Supper, that was leavened bread, not unleavened bread. So it couldn't have been the Passover. But people ignore that fact. And then the very things that they're mentioning are spoken of in great detail by those that were believers, that were taught by the emissaries themselves. And they tell you directly that he was the Passover. So there's really no way around that other than willingly ignoring the evidence or choosing not to look at it and listening to other people, which is a common problem that I highly encourage nobody do. You shouldn't listen and just blindly believe anybody. Read the text, right? That's why we're reading through it all so that you can see it for yourself. It says, speak to all the congregation of the children of Israel, saying, on the 10th of this month, let them take each man a lamb according to the houses of their families, each man a lamb for his household. And if they be few in the household, so that there are not enough for the lamb, he shall take with himself his neighbor that lives near him, as to the number of souls, or nefeshim, right? Nefeshot. Everyone according to that which suffices him shall make a reckoning for the lamb. It shall be to you a lamb unblemished, a male of a year old. You shall take it of the lambs and the kids. Now, that it's only a year old, people use this as a premise to say that our Mashiach's ministry only lasted a little more than a year. There's some that say 3.5. I don't have all the details myself. There's evidence that seems to be supporting both. So there's something to look into there. But regardless, he kept the festivals. He was obedient to the truth. And he said, follow me, right? Those are the things that we have to take in mind. It says, and it shall be to you a lamb unblemished, a male of a year old, and you shall take it of the lambs or the kids, and the kids. And that word kids means baby goats. That's all it ever meant. And we use it for children today, but it's always meant baby goats. You can look at Webster's dictionary from 1828 and it'll tell you kids are baby goats. It says, and it shall be kept by you till the 14th of this month, and all the multitude of the congregation of the children of Israel shall kill it toward evening. Just like our Mashiach came into Yerushalayim on the donkey, he was paraded into Yerushalayim on the 10th of the first month, and he's with them for 4 days so they could make sure that the lamb was unblemished and perfect. And then they killed him toward the evening, is when he died and gave up his ruach. And they shall take of the blood and shall put it on the 2 doorposts and on the lintel in the houses in whichsoever they shall eat them. And they shall eat the flesh in this night, roast with fire, and they shall eat unleavened with bitter herbs. You shall not eat of it raw, nor sodden, or boiled in water, or broiled rather, but only roast with fire, the head with the feet, and the appurtenances, or appendages, right? Nothing shall be left of it till the morning, and a bone of it you shall not break. But that which is left of it till the morning, you shall burn with fire. And that bone of it you shall not break is directly quoted as a messianic fulfillment of the reason why they did not break his knees and he was already dead, as the Passover, fulfilling this very thing. And thus shall you eat it, your loins girded, and your sandals on your feet, and your staves in your hands. And you shall eat it in haste. It is the Pesach to Yahuwah. I want you to point out when this first was instituted with Abraham, that we'll see in the book of Yobelim, they were not told to eat it in such a manner. They were not told to sacrifice in such a way. They were not told to have sandals on feet and staves in hand and eat in haste. It was a different type of celebration for Abraham than it was for the children here. And it was a different type of celebration here than it was after he came and established how to keep it. So the keeping of the feast is eternal. How it is done has changed as he pleased through time. And you can find that in quite a few places in a few different manners. The fact of the law and the covenant he gave, the responsibilities and the requirements of what his children were supposed to do have also changed over time. He's added things and he's taken away as he pleases by his sovereign will. So we're not really, I'm never going to advocate not to do the things that are in scripture, but I want to point out that sometimes he tells you to do things one way and then he'll tell you to do things in a different way. Like right here, they were told to eat of the Passover in this manner. And after our Mashiach came, with what he instituted, there is now fasting. He foretold about it. When the bridegroom was taken away, then you would fast. And then it's actually laid out what to do in the apostolic constitutions. But you can see the keeping of the feast, the rehearsal, and the appointed time for the marriage supper of the Lamb is eternal. And everyone that's of them partakes of it, no matter what time you're living in, but how you do it changes over time. So, Father willing, that can be seen. You can see it's not me making things up. Another example for this is in the dietary laws, something that some people get contentious over. But I encourage everyone, go look at Genesis, read the encounter after the flood with the offerings that Noah made of the clean animals, and listen to what our Creator told him. Every creeping thing that creeps across on the ground is food for you, like the green herb. He didn't say all the clean animals. He didn't say all the clean birds. He said every creeping creature, everything was permissible for a man to eat. He later gave to his children specific dietary instructions, a type of fast, if you will, although he identifies to them the difference between what is food and what is not. So I contest that we should always eat food and never abstain or never eat things that are not food. But these are things that have changed in the course of time. It's just the fact of what's there. Could that have been a typo that's in Genesis and maybe it didn't say creeping creatures before? That's possible. The book of Jubilees is in agreement with it. So there's two witnesses to that, but it's possible that that could be a mistranslation. However, I'm not qualified to just make that determination because I feel like it, and I don't think anyone else is either. So we got to deal with what is actually in the text and love the truth more than anything else, which is what I'm trying to advocate for you all as well. But back on point, it says, and I will go throughout all the land of Mitzrayim in that night, and will smite every firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, both man and beast, and on all the mighty ones of Egypt will I execute vengeance. I am Yahuwah. The same way he's plaguing them and mocking them for the mighty ones they worship, he brings vengeance on them and on the ones who made them. On them because they're accursed for the purposes in which they were created, but in themselves, an idol is nothing. It's the purposes to which men use them and the fact that they were made for it that causes it to be a defilement. And the blood shall be for a sign to you on the houses in which you are, and I will see the blood and will protect you, and there shall not be on you the plague of destruction when I smite in the land of Mitzrayim. And this day shall be to you a memorial, and you shall keep it a feast to Yahuwah throughout all your generations. Whether or not you are native born or so-called grafted in, it's for your generations as a feast for perpetual ordinance, right? And you shall keep it a feast for a perpetual ordinance. This is why our world is being judged, because people would rather keep pagan feasts instead of these things that he said to do. It is quite clear. If we are all supposed to be the temples of Elohim, the living dwelling place of the Almighty that is not made by the hands of men, then you know that no unclean thing is supposed to go as an offering in his dwelling place, and it's not supposed to be used for profane worship. That was frowned upon in the book of Maccabees, right? 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, and from the first day you shall utterly remove leaven from your houses. Whoever shall eat leaven, that soul shall be utterly destroyed from Yisrael. For from the first day until the 7th day. And the first day shall be called Kadosh, or set apart, and the 7th day shall be a set apart convocation to you, a set apart calling of an assembly, right? You shall do no servile work on them, only as many things as will be done by every soul. This only shall be done by you. And you shall keep this commandment, for on this day will I bring out your force out of the land of Mitzrayim, or your host, right? And you shall make this day a perpetual ordinance for you throughout your generations. Beginning the 14th day of the first month, you shall eat unleavened bread from evening till the 21st day of the month, till evening. 7 days leaven shall not be found in your houses. Whosoever shall eat anything leavened, that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Yisrael, both among the occupiers of the land and the original inhabitants. So the sojourners and the native born. Okay. Um, this also, I'm sorry, this is talking about when they go into the land, but also for what they're going to be doing while they're there, right? There's a twofold thing. And when they're in the land, the sojourner that's with them has to be circumcised and keeping the feast as well. That was the whole point. It was never exclusive or a racist thing. It was always anyone that would want to. But just as they had to drop everything and follow him, every one of the nations who wanted to be with them had to do the same. And while that's always been true, the context isn't dropping everything and going to a place now, but dropping everything and serving your creator with all your heart, mind, and soul. Same, you got to give up everything to follow him, just as he said. All right, and it says right here, you shall eat nothing leavened, but in every habitation of yours you shall eat unleavened bread. People have made the comment that leaven is sin, and they make this equation, although it says the only reference we have is the leaven of the scribes and Pharisees, which is hypocrisy. But then you also have the parable about the kingdom of the Shamayim being like a woman who hid 3 measures of leaven, right, in 3 measures until all was leavened. So there is leaven that is the doctrines of the kingdom that you want in and fermenting in you. And then there's a leaven of the scribes and Pharisees, which is hypocrisy, doing contrary to the thing that you say, right, or that you would want done. So it's not quite, doesn't mean sin. As far as I'm aware, there's no reference to leaven being sin, but the doctrines and teachings that are adhered to. It says, and Moshe called all the elders of the children of Yisrael and said to them, go away and take to yourselves a lamb according to your kindreds and slay the Pesach. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop, and having dipped it into some of the blood that is by the door, you shall touch the lintel and upon both doorposts, even of the blood which is by the door. But you shall not go out every one from the door of his house till the morning. And Yahuwah shall pass by to smite the Mitzrayites, and shall see the blood upon the lintel, and upon both the doorposts, and Yahuwah shall pass by the door, and shall not suffer the destroyer to enter into your houses to smite. And keep you this thing as an ordinance for yourselves and your children forever. And if you should enter into the land which Yahuwah shall give you, as he has spoken, keep this service. And it shall come to pass, if your sons say to you, what is this service? That you shall say to them, this Pesach is the Pesach to Yahuwah, as he defended the houses of the children of Israel in Mitzrayim, when he smote the Mitzrayim, but delivered our houses. And the people bowed and worshiped. You see the difference here? When he first came to them and told them things, they were grumbling, they didn't believe, and then they had problems. But now he's telling them what to do, and they are obedient. They bow and worship, and then they go and do what is commanded. And the obedience to the command brings about the, the desired effect of liberty. This is a constant thing that we have to keep in mind. It is the reason why we as a people are not at our liberty anymore. You don't have the freedom to do your own anything. You have to have permission for what's right, because we're sinning against our maker. It's the same principle here. And it says, and the people bowed and worshipped, and the children of Israel departed and did as Yahuwah commanded Moshe and Aharon, so they did. And it came to pass at midnight that Yahuwah smote all the firstborn in the land of Mitzrayim, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on the throne, to the firstborn of the captive maid in the dungeon, and the firstborn of all cattle. And Pharaoh rose up by night, and his servants and all the Mitzrayites, and there was a great cry in all the land of Mitzrayim, for there was not a house in which there was not a dead one. And Pharaoh called Moshe and Aharon by night and said to them, rise and depart from my people, both you and the children of Israel. Go and serve Yahuwah your Elohim, even as you say, and take with you your cattle and your oxen. Bless me also, I pray you. And the Mitzrayites constrained the people so that they cast them out of the land with haste, for they said, we all shall die. And the people took their dough before their meal was leavened, and bound up in their garments on their shoulders. And the children of Israel did as Moshe commanded them. And they asked of the Mitzrayites articles of silver and gold and apparel. And Yahuwah gave his people favor in the sights of the Mitzrayites, and they lent to them, and they spoiled the Mitzrayites. Now, people might wonder why, but if you recall, they just were, as a free people who had benefited these people and had been friends and associates, they had been taken into bondage and told to serve without pay. So this was restitution or recompense for that. And the children of Israel from Ramses to Succoth, to the full number of 600,000 footmen, even men, besides the baggage. And a great mixed company went up with them, and sheep and oxen and very much cattle. And they baked the dough which they brought out of Mitzrayim, unleavened cakes, for it had not been leavened. For the Mitzrayites cast them out, and they could not remain, neither did they prepare provision for themselves for the journey. And the sojourning of the children of Israel, while they sojourned in the land of Mitzrayim, and in the land of Canaan, you see it has both of them there, because this is the Septuagint version. It's also in the Dead Sea Scrolls and Josephus and elsewhere, was 430 years. This is what was explained by Shaul when he says that the promise that was given 430 years later, and that's when that started, the promise to Abraham was the beginning of the 430-year period. And that was, what was it, 5 years before Yitzhak was born? and 25 before he was a man and offered there. So there's a little bit of time going on here, but something to consider. It says, and it came to pass after the 430 years, all the forces of Yahuwah, or all the hosts of Yahuwah, came forth out of the land of Mitzrayim by night. It is a night, or sorry, it is a watch kept to Yahuwah, right here. It says to be observed right here for bringing them out, but right here it says this is a watch. And this is the part that I didn't quite get before, but during our time, or in the apostolic constitutions, you have the night kept for watching that's given sometime during your fast that was instituted in commemoration of this right here, and also alluded to in the people, or his people, his taught ones, in the garden with him, keeping the watch, but they couldn't stay up, right? It wasn't for them to do at that time. He was doing it in place because he wasn't going to be with them. So, but as you can see, this is where it was kind of instituted here. That watch would have been something that probably would have been in regard to Abraham with Yitzhak, but I don't remember that being written at all there. However, this is the first mention that I am aware of. It says, it is a watch kept to Yahuwah so that he should bring them out of the land of Mitzrayim. That very night is a watch kept to Yahuwah, so that it should be to all the children of Israel to their generations. And Yahuwah said to Moshe and Aharon, this is the law of the Passover. No stranger shall eat of it. And every slave or servant bought with money or silver, him you shall circumcise, and then shall he eat of it. Remember that it's every one of them that's redeemed, all the servants that he's redeemed, that they have to be circumcised in heart, and then they will keep the Passover in the spiritual sense too, because we're not supposed to physically do this at this point in time if you stay consistent with what's actually written in Scripture. And we've covered that before as well, right? A sojourner or hireling shall not eat of it. In one house shall it be eaten, and you shall not carry of the flesh out from one. Think about the parables of what this means, okay? In one house shall it be eaten, and you shall not carry of the flesh out from the house, and a bone of it you shall not break. All the congregation of the children of Israel shall keep it. And if any proselyte shall come to you to keep the Pesach to Yahuwah, you shall circumcise every male of him, and then shall he approach to sacrifice it, and he shall be even as the original inhabitant of the land. No uncircumcised person shall eat of it. There shall be one law to the native and to the proselyte coming among you. And the children of Israel did as Yahuwah commanded Moshe and Aharon for them, so they did. And it came to pass that day that Yahuwah brought out the children of Israel from the land of Mitzrayim with their forces, or their hosts and armies. All right, I'm pretty sure we're at 12:35, so it's probably going to be good for this day, and we will continue with our reading of the Exodus and the account of what happened with our forefathers after they left Egypt, the Red Sea crossing, which takes place during the rest of the unleavened bread time up to the end of it, the last great day. And then you have first fruits and onwards to their traveling to Sinai there in Arabia, where they will be given the eternal covenant. So thank you all for your time. You have a wonderful rest of your Shabbat, a great week ahead, and we will speak to you then. Shalom.